Welcome, everyone, to our regular weekday morning podcast on Kabbalah for Heretics with me, your heretic in chief, Yakov Leib HaKohain. Let's get back to where we left off in the Zohar yesterday morning as we rapidly come to the conclusion of Volume 4. As I say every morning, for those of you in the listening audience who may be new, we have been going through the Zohar over the past 25 years, every weekday morning and sometimes weekends, volume by volume, page by page, sentence by sentence. And going in that direction, we've completed volumes 1, 2, and 3, and are now, as I said, really completing volume 4. We're only a few pages away from the conclusion of volume 4. That may take, nonetheless, about a year. We go slowly and thoroughly as the Holy Spirit directs us. Getting back to where we left off. Rabbi Yehuda discussed on the verse, quote, who layeth the beams of his chambers in the waters. When God created the world, he said, he brought it forth from water and established it on water. I spoke about that at some length yesterday morning. From water. Just close your eyes and try to visualize how the beginning of life is depicted in visuals. Life emerging from the ocean. And here it is, right here, long before scientists ever discovered it. It says, God brought forth life from the waters and established it on water. He established supernal holy beings made from the Spirit which was detached from his mouth, as it is written, and through the breath of his mouth all their hosts, etc. Now look at that. Look at that. Listen to it again. He established supernal holy beings made from the Ruach, the Spirit, which was detached from his mouth, as it is written, and through the breath of his mouth all their hosts, etc. Let me say a few words about this. It tells us in the Gospel of John, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. But before the beginning, there was the breath of God, which brought forth the Word. So that the Word, the Hebrew words of the Torah, are in fact utterances of the breath of God, each one containing, every word of the Torah contains the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit of God, literally. That's why there's a whole field of Kabbalah where the alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet, is studied extensively for its mystical meanings. But there's another point here to be made, and it deals with chapters 1 and 2 of Genesis. You'll notice well, not 1 and 2, 1, 2, and 3. You'll notice that the first Adam, God creates the first Adam and Eve, blesses them, and makes them rulers over all the animals, the beasts of the field. He blesses them, but he does not ensoul them until right after that account it said, but there was yet no man to till the soil. So God created a second Adam from the dust of the soil. Now listen, and this is where it relates to the Zohar. And he breathed a breath of life into that man, Adam, and he became a living being. The difference between the first Adam and the second Adam is that the second Adam is ensouled by the breath of God, whereas the first Adam was not. And through the breath of his mouth, all their hosts. Among these he appointed some to sing his praises, fiery hosts, who sing praises in the morning and songs at evening, all ceasing at night. Why? Now just stop and ask yourself, why did God need these beings to sing his praises to him? Are you all considering that? Why? Why does God need to be praised? Jung answers that question in answer to Job, when he points out that at this very early stage of God's evolution, he was insecure about man's relationship to him and required being praised by man in order to assure himself that man indeed praised him. Why? Again, because he was insecure about it. Thus the whole episode with Job. Among these he appointed some to sing his praises, fiery hosts, who sing praises in the mornings and songs at evening, all ceasing at night. Above them are hosts of a still more fiery nature, who breathe fire and eat it, and then return to their places. Notice the emphasis on fire. God says of himself that he is a God of fire. And it just so happens that fire is associated with the left-hand side of the 10 Sephiros, the Sitra Achra, the side of evil, the side of unholiness. So all of these critters being created by God, these supernal beings, are being created out of the left-hand side of God. Not the right-hand side of mercy and love and holiness, but out of the side of fire, Gevurah, unholiness. Listen to that and what it means. All of these creatures, beings being created by God, were created out of the bed of evil which rests in the mind of God. Wow. Among these he appointed some to sing his praises, fiery hosts, who sing praises in the morning and songs at evening, all ceasing at night. What this is saying is that these holy beings who sing praises to God were created out of the side of evil in God. Nonetheless, they sing God's praises, thus indicating that there is an underlying underbelly of evil even in the most holy supernal beings. Above them are hosts of a still more fiery nature, who breathe fire and eat fire and then return to their places. Even more, the products of fire, the side of unholiness and evil in the mind of God. And they're higher. The higher we go with these spiritual beings, the more there is an underlying coat of evil in them. Above them are hosts of a still more fiery nature, who breathe fire and eat fire. And they eat fire. They eat this unholy Sitra Achra aspect of God. It nourishes them. It not only defines them, but it nourishes them, and these are holy beings. In the other side, there are abysses, one above the other, in all of which are executioners of Gevurah, from the side of stern Gevurah. Notice it's saying that these creatures of fire, who breathe fire and eat fire, who come from the fire of God, really are resident in the right-hand side of God, but they are underscored by the left-hand side of God. It says that they are in relationship to the left-hand side of God, and then they return to their place, which is the right-hand side of God. But even the holy has unholiness in it, expresses it, activates through it, and then returns to the side of holiness. But in the lowest depth, there are flames that burn flames, fires for the punishment of sinners issuing from the river of fire, all fiery and flaming, situated between the higher and the lower. Now I want to point out to you who are listening, it is very common among Jews and among rabbis to talk about Judaism as not having such a concept of the fiery punishment of sinners. They consider that to be, and quite visibly, very Christian. But the fact is, it does exist, and it exists right here in the Zohar. Sinners, and first of all, there is such a thing as sin, it's saying, are punished by the side of fire, unlike the usual comments by rabbis and Jews. In the other side, there are abysses, one above the other, in all of which are executioners of Gevurah, from the left-hand side of stern justice. In the lowest depths, there are flames that burn flames, fires for the punishment of sinners, issuing from the river of fire, all fiery and flaming, situated between the higher and the lower. But when the smoke of the altar ascends, they leave that place where they were standing to destroy and annihilate, and the scream of flaming fire from the river of fire returns to its place, and all enjoy the smoke from the altar when it goes straight up towards the Most High King. This is a direct reference to the sacrifice of the Messiah. It overcomes all elements of evil in God and the holy. It separates out the unholy from the holy. That's its purpose. And it brings holiness to all, even the sinner. The sacrifice in the temple on the altar, granted, here it's referring, or in the Old Testament, it's referring to an animal sacrifice. But this is a prefiguration of the Christological sacrifice. Listen again. It says, in the lowest depths there are flames that burn flames, fires for the punishment of sinners. But when the smoke of the altar ascends, that is when the Holy Spirit of the Ruach Mashiach, the soul of the Messiah, ascends out of his sacrifice of himself. The higher and the lower are united, and sin is forgiven universally. This is where the Christian concept of the redemptive value of the Messiah comes from. It's not a Christian idea, as it were. It is a very Judaic idea, firmly rooted in the oral Torah. Here, of course, in the Zohar. Amazing. And when it goes straight towards the Most Holy King, we have explained that it is the desire of each one to ascend above in order to please the Holy King. It is necessary for man to ascend to God, to complete God, to heal God out of its disunity back into its unity. That's what's meant by pleasing God. Notice it says, that is the desire of each one to ascend above in order to please the Holy King. And Uriel appears there like a mighty lion crouching over his prey. We'll stop here for the morning, and we'll, of course, resume tomorrow morning where we've just left off, where it says, when the priests and the Israelites saw this, they rejoiced because they knew that the sacrifice was acceptable to the Holy King. A reference to the crucifixion, as it were, of the Mashiach. And we'll talk about that in greater detail tomorrow morning. Let's stop here for this morning. Having completed the portion of the Zohar, let's now do what I do every morning, which is to recite the ritual prayer for the dead in honor of our departed beloved friend, comrade, tzaddik, Leonard Cohen. Yiskadal v'yiskadash shmei rabo, Balmo divro chirusei v'yamlech malchusei, v'chayachon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beis Yisrael, bagalo uvizman kori v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabo meverach, le'olom omeo maya, Yisbarach v'yishtabach v'yispoar, v'yisromam v'yisnasei v'yisadar v'yisalei v'yisalal, shmei d'kutsha b'richu, Le'olom mencha b'irachasa v'shirasa, tishbechasa v'nechemasa, damiran bomo v'imru amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shamaya, v'chayinu aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'imramav, hu ya'asei shalom, aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'imru amen. Now let me point something out to you about this ritual prayer for the dead that is very much related to what we've just been reading in the Zohar. When the person reciting the Kaddish, the prayer for the dead, comes to the end, Osei Shalom b'imamav, hu ya'asei shalom, aleinu v'yakol Yisrael, he bows to the left and then bows to the right, even in the prayer for the dead, and especially in the prayer for the dead, the side of evil is invoked along with the side of holiness, thus uniting them. Baruch Hashem. Well, that concludes our podcast for this morning. Thank you, Yishai and David, for being here to record, and I'll see you all tomorrow morning. In the meantime, Yivarech